On this week's podcast, I am talking with licensed Reiki Master Teacher Jules Davis about Reiki and Judaism. And this is a part of a series that I conceived back in a book that I conceived back in 2017 about just getting to know all of the religions in the world peace grids. And I was shown that when we would understand each other and each other's perspectives, we would have a better understanding that we're all the same, and that even though we might follow different religious or spiritual traditions, that we're all working toward the same end. And I think that's a bit of that unification consciousness. Recently, the world peace energy came in, and I think that just revived this within me when I was guided to create this series of podcasts along the same line. And I don't know if it will become a book or not, but in the meantime, it's just been an honor and a pleasure to talk to people about their religious and spiritual traditions and to begin to understand them a little bit better. And I hope you're enjoying the process as much as I am. So, Jules, thanks so much for being here with us today.
Happy to be here, Pam. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Before we get started, I just want to let you know about some of the courses that I have coming up. There is a licensed Holy Fire Karuna Reiki class happening. Also, at the moment, I have a class, an animal Reiki classes happening in person on Campobello Island. The Karuna class in August and the animal communication class in August are online, and those are being offered in an Australian friendly time zone, which is evenings here, early mornings in Australia, very early mornings in Asia, and probably too late to attend for our European friends. And I also want to let people know that in October we have a full lineup of classes, and those are going to be hybrid classes. So any people that want to join us here at the farm can join us in person, and others can join us online. I also have a link to the Reiki Business book in the podcast notes if you want to pick that up. And if you don't already get our newsletter, there's a link that you can easily sign up for that too. Jules, what do you have going on in the near future?
I have also lots of Reiki classes coming up online and in person. And then I also teach crystal healing classes, which I sometimes have online and in person in the Los Angeles area. And I do psychic and mediumistic development classes, which I have those online for now and some workshops coming up in person. So lots of different things. They can check that out on my website, Healing with
Fantastic.
Jules. Yeah.
Yes, and we'll put a link to your website and your contact information too yeah, in the
Sounds
link.
good.
Great. I'm just going to invite everybody to bring your hands together in Gasho and activate your Reiki energy. And just calling in your symbols today as we delve into one of the older religions, Judaism. And just bringing in your symbols. And we invite Reiki to open our hearts and our minds, our bodies and our spirits, to open our chakras and our ears so that we can listen and gain from hearing these new or different perspectives. Because even within the same religion or traditions, we all may have a different perception or a different understanding of them. And it's such a gift to be able to understand the world from a different perspective. And we're just open to the teachings and to healing any division that may exist within us. Open to the unification consciousness that flows through us now. And we open our hearts to learn and to grow and to continue evolving as Reiki practitioners. We are so blessed to be of a lineage of light bringers who are creating wellness on the earth today and to live in an age of religious freedom where we're free to express ourselves as we choose. And we thank Jules for spending time with us today. And we thank you, the listeners, for the light that you are in the world. Aho, Namaste, Amen, Amin, Ashe, Shalom. And so it is. Thank you. So, Jules, you were raised in the Judaic tradition, and can you tell us a little bit about what that was like?
Sure. I laugh only because I was raised in like a culturally traditional Jewish home. Both my parents are Jewish, but they also believed in a lot of Eastern philosophies. So my uncle calls us Hindus. Some people would call us Boo Jews. So I had the best of all the worlds, I feel
Yeah.
personally. But we did grow up going to synagogue and following Judaism. And I grew up going to a elementary school that I spent half the day in Hebrew immersion classes and half the day in English in Edmonton, Alberta, actually, Talmud Torah, shout out. And so I was very involved in Judaism when I was a younger girl. And then we relocated to Canada, and that kind of disappeared from my life. Relocated to California from Canada, and that kind of disappeared. But when I was young, it was significantly a part of my life. Everybody pretty much around me was Jewish. There's like a Jewish phone book for all the cities in Canada, and all the businesses are advertised in there, and
I
everybody
didn't know that.
interacted with each other, at least in the 80s anyways. I don't know about now, but yeah. And it didn't matter which synagogue you went to, like everybody was connected, especially through these Jewish schools and stuff. So that's how I grew up, and it was something that I felt very connected to. I really liked the prayers. I loved speaking Hebrew. Some of my best friends were Israeli, so we would speak it outside of school, and it was very much a profound part of my life that I've continued to identify with. Even if I'm not as religious practicing, I still feel connected to on a soul level.
Yeah, I can see that. I think I've come to realize as doing this that we wind up being a product of how we were raised. Even if we step away from it, it's still very much a part of us and part of our history and part of what formed us, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. I remember the first time I went to Israel, and I just felt like I was at home. There was like a feeling of being connected to the place. So I feel like it's been, I don't know if it's something just in my DNA from my family, or if it's also somewhere where I have lived at some point, maybe in another lifetime. That's how profound the connection was for me. So some people identify as culturally Jewish or ethnically Jewish, some people religiously Jewish. There's all different ways, but most people that are Jewish, it's like you're Jewish, even if you don't follow the religion on a practical way where you're devout. People are still considered Jewish if they're born into the faith.
Wow, that's incredible. And is there a long lineage within your family of Judaism?
Yeah, both sides of my family are Jewish. And when I did the 23andMe years ago, the test to see where my family was from, even though I knew some generations back, it was like the first time I did it, it said 99.9% Ashkenazi Jewish, which is like the Eastern European Jews.
Okay.
And yeah, and so I think I'm downgraded now to 99.6%, and the rest is just broadly Eastern European. So it's very much in my DNA. My grandparents are Holocaust survivors. We've definitely have a strong connection to Judaism and what that has been like for people of the Jewish faith, which hasn't always been an easy journey.
It has not at all. had the, I don't know what to call it, but it was an honor in a way to visit the Auschwitz camps when I was in Poland. I thought I can't go there and not see those. And it just, it hurt. It hurt all the way to my core that this happened, and the sheer magnitude of it really came home when you viewed that. And I have a lot of Jewish friends, and just, I don't know, I felt that I understood things a little bit more once I had physically been there and seen what I saw. And there have been some, and that's not the only difficult time. There have been really difficult times throughout the history. But tell us a little bit about what it was like growing up. What about the traditions? And tell us about the religion itself, if you can.
Sure. We're there's all different sects within Judaism, just like within Christianity or the Muslim faith. Other faiths have different branches. So
Hmm.
I grew up going to actually an Orthodox synagogue because my parents preferred that rabbi and they were very close friends with him, even though we didn't follow the Sabbath stuff of where you can't turn on the lights and do these kind of things because the day of
Okay.
rest for the Sabbath. But we did observe all of the holidays. My parents would go, we would go pretty often. We weren't just high holiday Jews, which are the people that go to like repent every year at the new year to like repent for their sins for the highest holiday, holiest day of the year, Yom Kippur. We were there on a regular basis, like almost weekly. We would go to the
Okay.
services, and in an Orthodox synagogue and some of the more religious sects, the women and men sat separately, which was interesting
Right.
because my mom was like a super feminist and my dad too. And so some people think or might observe that as misogynistic. But when you get actually into the faith a little bit more and exploring, I remember talking to a Chabad rabbi who my mom was close to, another part of my life. Chabad are like the really religious sect, another really religious sect of Judaism,
Okay.
who are also follow a lot of Jewish mysticism. I don't want to get off track here, but I talked to him at one point about why were women separate from men, because they also separate in Chabad. And he said, women are more connected to God. Men have to try harder. So they have to do the
Oh,
prayers in order to maintain their connection to God. But women are automatically connected to God. So that it was like an interesting perspective because,
that's the last thing I would have thought of.
yeah, that was one person's take on it, but I thought it was really beautiful because I would talk to him. I was like what about this? What about this? I don't agree with this. And so it was interesting to hear his perspective and take in a very spiritual way on why things are separated or why men do this and women do this. And actually, in some ways, I feel like there's more balance in the religious Jewish households because there's not a power struggle. It's we know that we do this and we know that we do this, if that makes sense. It might not be for me, but it is that way for a lot of people who practice the more religious aspects of the faith, which would include observing different religious laws, like observing the Sabbath, 1 day a week you rest, you don't spend money on things, you don't turn on any power. So that's like an old school kind of thing.
Yeah,
So
I
you're
hadn't
not
heard
allowed
of that.
to drive a car or do all of these different things. Basically, you're supposed to pray and rest. That's what the Sabbath day is for. And I'm probably like very giving a very brief description of what that is supposed to be, but we were not observant of that in my household. We drove to the Orthodox synagogue, yet we were welcomed. And what I liked about the prayers in the more religious sects of Judaism is they tend to do them more in Hebrew, whereas in some of the other sects of Judaism, like some of the conservative or reform synagogues do it more in English to make
Yeah.
it easier for people to understand. but I always loved doing things in Hebrew. So that was always something that for some reason I connected with the spirituality of that, and really always enjoyed my experiences of going to the synagogue and having spiritual experiences there. I really felt a connection growing up. I don't think I've described Judaism in a well-rounded way, but obviously we believe in God, and there's definitely a spiritual connection through Jewish mysticism, like Kabbalah. So some people believe in that. Those who study Jewish mysticism might have a more spiritual way of looking at Judaism. And I wish I could give you a lot more information about the Kabbalah, but I haven't studied it extensively. I have, however, been to some of those spiritual places in Israel, like Tzfat, which is up on a mountain where people believe that the Messiah will return there at some point. So in Judaism, we don't believe the Messiah has come. We're still waiting for the Messiah to come.
Yes.
But there is this part, one of the reasons, I'm totally going in all different directions here, but one of the reasons why we bury the dead instead of cremate in Judaism is because there's like a part of the back of the skull that when the Messiah comes, I guess will rise again or something. The people will need this part of their bones to stand up, or I don't know. There's something about that.
Okay. No,
I could be butchering it, but there is something about that where we don't desecrate the body. We don't desecrate the body, but we also need to preserve these bones for this reason. But there's a spiritual place called Sfat or Safed in English, where they practice a lot of Jewish mysticism. People who are more religious, and that can be from different sects of Judaism. I said I was Ashkenazi. There's also Sephardic Jews. They have synagogues up on this mountain, and they're believing in similar things of the Messiah coming through this place in the future at some point. And so a lot of what they're like Chabad are trying to bring people back to Judaism, because they believe that when people return to the faith and believe in God again, that's when we will get restored, or the Messiah will come and things will change spiritually, energetically, karmically, etc., whatever way you want to look at that. So I grew up with kind of a combination of Chabad beliefs and Orthodox Jewish beliefs, and then this strong feminist woman and Hinduism and Buddhism philosophies and all sorts of things commingled with each other. But I've always identified as Jewish. Like, I am Jewish. That is what I am. But I don't necessarily follow all of the rules that go with being Jewish, if that makes sense.
Many people in this podcast, and many people who are religious, have outgrown some of the rules within their religion, it seems, and so they still identify with that religion, and so that makes perfect sense. I think it's fairly common that sometimes there's a need to express the religion or the tradition in your own way that can be a little bit different than what is expected or what is taught sometimes. So that makes perfect sense.
There's a lot of ritual.
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah, there's a lot of ritual.
Tell us about that.
Like intentional rituals. Like, I remember when my mother died, the rabbi that she was close to, he was a Chabad rabbi, and his wife, who's the Rebbitzin, the wife of the rabbi, she was very supportive of my mom. She took her to a lot of her appointments and stuff. And so they became very close to our family, and they guided us through this very religious, traditional ritual style of sitting Shiva. It's called when somebody passes away who's close to you, you sit Shiva in mourning, in grief. And there's these beautiful, very like intentional things that you do even around the funeral. So in Judaism, We have to bury the dead,
Okay.
usually within 24 hours, sometimes 48. So we don't wait like months to have a convenient funeral. If somebody dies, you bury them. And there's this beautiful, they're called chevra kadisha. I'm using Jewish terms, but they actually come, they're friends of the people who have transitioned, or the mourners, and they come and they bathe the body, and they wrap the person who's transitioned in a linen shroud,
Wow.
and they're buried in a simple pine box. So we also don't do like fancy caskets or anything like that. It's returning the body to the earth as simply as possible. And legally here we have to use caskets. Otherwise, I think it probably would just be a linen shroud type of thing. But so the body is cleansed, which is like a beautiful ceremonial experience, and then it's returned to the earth essentially. But for the first 24 hours after somebody passes, the body's not supposed to be left alone. So there's prayers being said the whole time, and people can volunteer. It's like a mitzvah, meaning it's something really beautiful to do for somebody else. A good deed is
Wow.
to sit with the body and say prayers or recite prayers, and helping the soul to make the transition, basically giving them permission, helping them return to God, whatever way you want to look at that. And then for 7 days, you sit Shiva for longer if it's somebody closer to you, parent or something. You're supposed to sit low to the ground to be closer to the earth, which is where they now have been returned to. And even some of the rules that we were explained to during this process through them was not to give fresh flowers, because that's like a maybe reminder of life, and we're supposed to be in mourning. So it's like an interesting thing where we normally give flowers to people or in honor of people who have passed. There's also a part of it where like they said, don't listen to music, like just be in your quiet, be in your grief. It was very intentional in a very beautiful way. I felt the
Yeah,
way
I
that they
mean, it
guided us
sounds like
through.
a beautiful ceremony. Like, what a beautiful
Yeah.
way to honor a life.
Yeah. And we rip our clothes as an act of showing our grief. When you go to the funeral, if you've lost somebody who's close, everybody who's there, it's a mitzvah as well, a good deed to honor the family and the person who's transitioned by contributing to the burial process. So we don't use a big lift of dirt. Everybody shovels until the last dirt goes in, as a really supportive thing for the people who've lost somebody, and also for in honoring the dead. There's this, it's very intentional and very beautiful, I found.
I
And
do too.
the prayers that go with it, and also just all of that whole ceremonial experience was really beautiful and very spiritual to me. And I really feel like it helped to process the grief, even though it's all a blur when you lose somebody like super
Yes.
close to you.
Yes.
You don't know what's going on at that point. So it was so nice to have them just do this, do that, facilitating this religious spiritual experience for us. And that's when I was like, yeah, I really identify with these kind of things. There's such beauty in some of the intention here. I don't necessarily believe in some parts of the faith, or they don't resonate with me. I'll just say it that way. But there are some really beautiful spiritual traditions that I very much identify with, and really love the intention of the rituals that go with it.
And I think there's some comfort in the fact that these rituals have been going on for a very long time, that
Yeah.
um, that you're repeating something that's gone back through your ancestral lineage, really, and that's beautiful.
Yeah. If it's a parent, I think it's a year that you mourn the loss, like
Okay.
intentionally acknowledge them. If
Yeah.
it's like a sibling, I think it's 30 days. There's different times for different kinds of loss.
Relationships. Yeah.
Yeah, relationships, but just of these intentional acts that you do in honor of them for that long. It's, for me, it was very beautiful.
It is very beautiful, and and there is a lot of ceremony within this tradition. You talked about mitzvah, and it makes me think of bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs, and things like that. What are some of the other important traditions that you had observed or that you noticed or you'd like to tell us about?
Yeah, bar and bat mitzvahs are like a coming of age time where they're celebrating somebody coming into puberty, essentially, which is why women actually can have their bat mitzvah earlier than men because they
Because they,
grow up a little faster. It's not, it is actually a maturity thing. That's like part of why they do it. Let's see, other ritualistic things that I like.
my neighbors, we used to go over for Hanukkah and the lighting of the menorah, which was
Yeah.
nice and such a lovely tradition. And
Yeah, everything is, we do this because of this. It's very intentional. And that is because, unfortunately, for thousands of years, Jewish people have been persecuted in different ways. And so a lot of the religious ritual that we do is actually honoring things that have happened in the past, whether it's a temple being destroyed, like Hanukkah, we're like looking for the miracle of light. They're trying to light the menorah at the temple after it had been destroyed. Passover, when the Jewish people were enslaved in Egypt and had to escape in this great triumphant way with Moses. There's all these different things that we celebrate that are in some ways honoring things that have been quite tragic in history for the Jewish people.
yeah,
And it's, we will never forget. We're never going to forget that these things have happened to us. And also, there's always the saying of next year in Jerusalem of returning back to this homeland of where there's a lot of history for the Jewish people as well. And so, yeah, lighting the candle is definitely a fun type of thing, but it is honoring something that was pretty significant that happened. Or Passover, we do an intentional thing for 8 days where we have these Passover seders to go through all of the things that the Jewish people went through on their exodus from Egypt and the plagues that were cast on the Egyptians, if you believe in all of that stuff. But it is very dramatic and severe, and you drop drips of blood and all of these different things, which is wine. But
right.
like even the food that you make is like reminiscent of the mortar that the bricks used with for the bricks that were laid in Egypt by the slaves of the Jewish people and all these different things. It's very interesting. And Jews, I can maybe in a funny way, I'm saying this in jest, but very dramatic, like remembrance of all of these things. Like you'll never forget. We even have salty water for the tears that were shed. You know,
Right.
we dip things in salty water
So much
and
symbolism
a lot.
yeah,
Yeah, a lot.
it's
Yeah.
really, wow.
Yeah.
That's really neat. And when you began studying Reiki, how does that blend together with Judaism for you?
For me, it was synchronous because for me, my belief system has always been spiritual, like I said, more than
Right.
religious. And I've always felt a connection to higher power energy. So that was never something that I questioned. And I've also always felt connection to spirit. And so it made sense to me just channeling this frequency of energy. What was the most interesting thing, I think, of my connection with Reiki is that when I first started working with Reiki, I would have different visuals. So I'm very clairvoyant and I would see images of Jesus, or I would see animals. I'm very connected to the animal kingdom as well. And I would see one time I saw this beautiful white peacock and I was like, oh, that must be. And I looked up what a white peacock meant. And the first thing I saw was Jesus. And I was like, oh, that must be because they're Christian. I kept associating Jesus with my clients instead of with me because I had no connection with Jesus in a way because it wasn't from my belief system being Jewish growing up.
Right.
We don't have the same kind of philosophy religiously where Jesus is he's like considered, I think, a prophet or something, but not in the same way that Christians hold Jesus in high regard. So I kept dismissing it as that must be for somebody here. It's not for me. And then I took the Holy Fire Karuna Reiki training in 2014 with William Rand. And he was talking about how Jesus was very much connected to the Holy Fire Reiki energy. And I was like, oh, it's for me.
The white peacock that was showing up was for me all along.
These are for me. Jesus is here for me. And I didn't have any resistance to it. It made perfect sense. But I was just like, oh, my logical brain was dismissing this because of my religious upbringing and just my life experience up to that point. And then I just fully embraced Jesus and like love inviting him into my sessions and have images of him, just like I have images of other ascended masters and the archangels and things like that in my space. And I don't feel like I have to defend my connection to Jesus because Jesus to me is just a beautiful spiritual figure.
Yes.
I never had an issue with Jesus. He just wasn't really somebody that I connected with in that way before that. So that was a really beautiful moment when I was like, oh, Jesus is here for me. It's like, Jesus is my homeboy. He's here to work with me. But on a religious level, I never felt a disconnect or a separation. And I think that's also in great respect for my parents, that they always had a very open mind about other philosophies and spirituality and openness to other things. With the same Chabad rabbi told me, all of those religions you mentioned, like Hinduism, Buddhism, they're all worshiping the same thing as we are. So you could find all of that within Judaism. And I was like, I believe that, but I'm also open to exploring other religious practices. And so it never affected me. That's my short answer. I felt I'm a Jewish person practicing Reiki. It didn't feel like they had to be mutually exclusive of each other.
Do you find that Reiki enhanced your understanding? Because I found Reiki brought more clarity to my spiritual and religious background. And did you find that too?
I'm not sure if it brought more clarity. I definitely feel like there was a time when I wasn't sure if I was comfortable with the word God, if that makes sense. Yeah. And I went through
talked about that on last week's podcast. I couldn't use God for a while.
And it wasn't like I was angry with God or didn't any of that kind of stuff. It just felt like that was a religious term. And so I didn't want to be exclusive, or I don't know. It just felt there was a disconnect for me with the word God, but I definitely always felt a belief in a higher power or something beyond us. And I feel like over the last several years of me really integrating with Reiki energy and it integrating with me, I've much more embraced the word God. And I don't feel like I have to, when I teach classes, I say God, spirit, universe, whatever word resonates with you guys who are here, because some people might have religious trauma and the word God is also uncomfortable for them. I don't feel like it was a religious trauma. It was just a word that I felt attached to religion. So it felt like I had to separate myself from it at one point because I wanted to be all encompassing. Like I love the unification consciousness stuff.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too. And I did have some religious trauma, and that did separate me from the word for a while. And like you, the Holy Fire energy really healed that trauma for me. And I took the word back. And it is the word that's the most comfortable for me. But I'm aware that it's not comfortable for everybody. And so like you, I just invite people to use whatever word that they like the best. Like your friend, the rabbi, said, we're all talking about the same thing, just using different traditions, different language, and a different way of getting there. And Munakai Mohammed, in our discussion around the Islam or the Muslim religion and traditions, said it's like you and I have agreed to meet somewhere at a stadium, say, and I'm coming from the mountains and you're coming from the flat plains below, and we're both going to get there, but our way to get there was very different. I took twisty, turny mountain roads, and I'm telling you about the path there, and you're saying, what are you talking about? It was a straight road
Yeah.
up the hill, not down the hill. And so I just feel, and in this series, it's my hope that we can all just get a better understanding of each other and where
Yeah.
everybody's coming from. And I'm listening to you describe those beautiful traditions around death and dying, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I wish we all had those. And I'm thinking, I wonder if I can pick this from that and this from that. And everybody has so many beautiful spiritual traditions, and I feel that going through that process would be so healing and so beautiful. And yet there are other things that I remember being at my good friend at their home, and we were eating supper, and her mom, and we were eating meat, and her mom said, would you like something to drink, Pam? And I said, yeah, can I have some milk? And everybody went and her whole family, and I didn't know what was wrong. And she and Jeanette, God love her, she just thought for a minute, and she said, yeah, never mind, she's not Jewish, she's allowed to have milk with meat. It's okay. They were very careful with their their food choices, and I remember really thinking how cool they were, because we were in a very small town in New Brunswick, Canada, St. Stephen, and they were probably the only, I don't know if they were the only Jewish family there, but there weren't very many. If there were more, I didn't know them. And there weren't very many. And in order for them to go to synagogue, and they didn't go every week, obviously, but they went as often as they could, they had to travel 5 hours to
Wow.
Portland, Oregon, or Portland, Oregon, Portland, Maine, in order to go to synagogue. And I thought, wow, that's really neat. And I don't know, I loved when they would allow me to be part of their lives and some of their traditions. It was always so interesting. So,
Yeah. I
yeah,
actually would probably go to synagogue more if I had a connection to a community here and
right.
felt connected to it, because I do miss things about it. And when the high holidays or big stuff comes around, I'm like, oh, I wish I had somewhere to go. And I know a lot of Jewish people here in LA, and I'm in the LA area where it's full of Jews, but I haven't really connected, even though I've been here for over 20 years, with people who do follow the faith enough to get involved in the community. So it would be nice for me, just in having this conversation. I'm like, there are things I definitely miss around Judaism. The whole thing about being kosher, which is similar, like Muslims follow a lot of the same thing. We're very similar in a lot of ways. There's some of the biggest
A lot of people don't
issues.
realize that
Yeah.
the Judaic tradition or Judaism is the origin for Christianity and
Yeah.
for the Muslim religion.
Yeah. We're the OGs.
Oh, geez.
We're the OGs. But I, like, even kosher, if you want to talk about intentional things, it's like things that are kosher. It's not just that it's been blessed by a rabbi or things of that nature. The actual kosher produce, there's a rabbi that goes and inspects, and it's not just a blessing, but they go and inspect the like sanitation practices and things of that nature. A lot of it has to do with sanitation. So the
Right.
reason why they don't mix milk and meat is for cross contamination,
Yeah.
which is less of an issue nowadays, but it can still happen, which is why in a lot of restaurants they have like dairy cutting boards and meat cutting
Right.
boards and stuff like that. So it's more about like health stuff. Pigs or shellfish are tend to have more stuff in them when you
Yeah.
eat meat. I'm a vegetarian, so I didn't have that as a issue growing up, but shellfish are like the bottom feeders. Some of them are like the cockroaches of the sea. That's what they say. So they got a lot of the crap that they're digesting and in their digestive system. So that's why they're not allowed. It's actually very like reasonable, logical things. You should be
Yeah.
able to eat whatever you want if it resonates with you. But in the Jewish faith, the things that are kosher, even how they slaughter an animal,
Yeah.
is part of it being kosher or not kosher. And
Mhm.
it's to make it a humane death for the animal so that when they do get slaughtered, it's an instantaneous, they slit the throat of a cow or whatever. So it's not going through a more traumatic ending to its
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
So a lot of stuff makes sense to me when you look at it in that way. Like, why do we do it? Because of there's like a reason or an origin for a lot of it. And then there's some that's just like been passed on and passed on. I remember talking to the rabbi because I have tattoos. Am I not going to be able to be buried in a Jewish cemetery? And he well, I think that's like a myth that's been perpetuated by the mothers in Judaism for
The
like a
mothers who
really
didn't
long
want their daughters and sons to get tattoos.
we're not supposed to desecrate our bodies. Lots of people have had plastic surgeries and all different kinds of things, so were they not allowed to be buried? In Israel, you can be buried. In Jewish cemeteries here, you can be buried. But all my life, we're told you can't be buried in a Jewish cemetery if you have tattoos. So it was funny to hear that from a very religious Jew saying, there's some things that are like old wives' tales, or like the women have been putting fear into their children for a long time.
I
But
think every religious tradition has that. Tattoos show up in a lot of them too.
yeah. One
Wow.
of the things I'll also mention is Yom Kippur. So that's the Day of Atonement.
Yeah.
And that's once a year. So there's, I believe, 9 or 10 days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, which is the head of the year, the start of our calendar, because we follow a different calendar in Judaism. And so it's the new year. And then you have 10 days essentially to repent for any of your sins so that you get inscribed in the book of life, basically. So God keeps you around for the next year. And every
Okay.
year you go back and you atone again for any sins. Even there's a tradition of going to a body of water and casting your sins away by throwing breadcrumbs or whatever you want to throw out into the sea. You're casting away your sins. You're asking God to absolve them and absolve you of them through these prayers, which are quite, and you're saying, you're like, the traditional way is you actually strike your chest. So it's, you really are saying sorry. And you're also very much like embodying this belief of, I've sinned and everybody has the ability to sin. We're all human, so we can sin. And so we're all going to atone for all of the sins that we could have possibly done because we're all capable of them. And so you
Wow.
atone and you like do this whole thing and you fast. It's a dry fast. You're not even allowed water unless you have a health reason or you're a child or pregnant. But it's a dry fast for about 26 hours.
Wow.
And you atone during that time to get closer to God. You pray. It's like a whole shebang from night before until the sundown. And then you can break your fast after that. But to me, even though people dread it, I think it's actually quite beautiful to every year go, what have I done that might have hurt somebody else? And how can I make peace with them? Either through an actual apology, which you're supposed to do in that window of a week and a half or so,
Yes.
or you can write it down and acknowledge it. But in some way, you're just acknowledging and taking responsibility or accountability for anything that you could have done to somebody else that could have caused harm or been a sin or whatever way.
Wow. I don't know. I love the intentionality. I love the connection to history. I don't know. I love so much about it. I thank you for describing it all for us. And what advice would you have for a Jew who is interested in Reiki and studying Reiki? What would you tell them?
I would would just tell them to follow their own inner guidance and connection to God. And if it's some way might interfere, I feel very fortunate. I'm from a family who's pretty open-minded. Even the more conservative members of my family are like, I don't know what you're doing, but if it makes you happy, just go ahead and do it. When it comes to my spiritual practices and my Reiki practice and all of that stuff. So hopefully they can explain it to family members if they are more religious. The way that I've been doing it lately for people who are more religious is just saying, I am connecting to God through my work and I'm channeling the light of God, because that's what Reiki is to me, is the light of pure unconditional love, which for me is what God energy is. And so they can work in synergy with each other, your religious faith. And since Reiki is not a religion, it doesn't have any negative influence on anybody's religious or spiritual practices.
No, and in fact, it's the opposite, isn't it? That it can enhance our religious or spiritual practices and experience.
And even bring more compassion or tolerance to other religious practices or the way that other people are. And that's one thing that Reiki, I feel, has worked with me a lot, because I've always thought that I was a compassionate person, but it really has enhanced that within me, of just being more compassionate and aware of other people and more tolerant, I'll say. And that's still a work in progress for me. It's been something that I really feel, I was always curious about other religions. And so I never had that kind of issue personally, but I do feel a sense of compassion at a greater level for all people and all the things that they believe in and that they practice, and that it is something that can help people with their compassion and tolerance of each other, which is essentially what you're talking about here, religion and Reiki and the unification consciousness.
It is. Jules, thank you so much for all of this information. And listen, I didn't ask you if you'd like to lead us in a prayer of some sort, but would you? Or is that something you'd like me to do today?
Sure.
You're so good at it.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you would lead us in just whatever you're guided toward.
Okay. All right. I will just say, place your hands comfortably on your body. And if you have Reiki, give yourself some Reiki. And just take a few cleansing breaths, bringing your breath and awareness inward. Just feeling into your own energy and the wonderful gift that it is you. And if you have any distracting thoughts, just let them settle on their own. Don't force them. And the light of God, it shines down upon you. It flows all around you and into you. Gift of pure, unconditional love. And I want you to feel into that love. Feel it awakening your capacity to love and to be loved. feel the light of compassion expanding from within you to the outside of your body in every direction, the front of you to the back of you, the left of you and to the right of you. And above you and below you, feel that beautiful light within you. Imagine this light now expanding beyond you, reaching out into the world. The beautiful light of who you are is connected to everything around you, every living thing. And as your awareness flows into other directions, see the light of God in all the things around you. The sky, the trees, the houses, the birds, the human beings. All connected with this beautiful divine spark, this God-like energy that we all have within us. Feel yourself harmonizing with all the living things of the earth and beyond the earth, beyond the physical realm. Shifting your awareness now to the spiritual realm as well. Feel that same light of God, the light of compassion flowing around you to the non-physical realm. Remember that we exist in both realms, or in all the realms, all around us. All the living things, physical and non-physical. We are connected. We are one. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And so it is.
And so it is. Thank you, Jules. And I'll just take a moment to say thank you to the listeners. Thank you so much for joining us this week. Just keep spreading your love and your light in the world. The world will be a better place. Namaste.